Good afternoon. Welcome to IDC's Futurescape webinar titled Latin America Predictions 2019. My name is Elizabeth Enriquez, Integrated Marketing Program Manager for Latin America, and I will be serving as your moderator today. First, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. Throughout the session, you will be able to ask questions from your computers. To do so, at any point, please type your question into the Q&A box. These questions will be answered at the end of the presentations by our speaker and leading industry analysts. Tomorrow, you will receive an email with a link to the audio replay and the presentation of this webinar. In this webinar, we will have the participation of Jacob Biner, Vice President of Research for IDC Latin America. He manages teams of hardware, software, and services analysts who are spread out throughout the region, providing analysis across more than a dozen countries in Latin America. It's now my pleasure to turn the presentation over to Jay. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and thanks for everybody who called in today. Welcome to IDC Latin America predictions for the most important trends impacting the ICT industry in 2019 and beyond. This is the 15th year IDC Latin America has published industry predictions, and the 4th year we do it using the Futurescape methodology. As we move into 2019, we continue to witness the most important transformation of our industry in our time, in the context of a political and economic transformation within our Latin America region. Two forces in opposing directions that will drive opportunity, success, and for some companies that don't adapt fast enough, failure in the coming years. Up until now, an economic and political force has had limited technology adoption in Latin America. Some might even say, see a turn to the positive in 2019 in terms of hope. But a more fundamental global and technological transformation force is thrusting everything forward and, whether we like it or not, compelling everything and everyone to accelerate the pace of innovation and change, some might say even exponentially. Every 12 years, Latin America has witnessed the simultaneous presidential elections in Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia. Those three countries together represent 61% of the regional population and 66% of its GDP. This happened in 2018, where Chile, which is the 4th tier 1 economy in the region, also began the year with a newly elected president. The impact of this year's transition was magnified by the degree of political change in Brazil, which saw a move from left to a right-wing ruling party after 2 decades of rule of the PT, the Workers' Party. And in Mexico, which for the first time in modern history, saw a drastic move away from the center and into what seems like populist territory. The strength of the shift derived from the public reaction to a 4-year economic slowdown with subpar regional growth below 1.5% and a host of political and corruption scandals that shocked every corner of the region. In short, 2018 was a volatile year in Latin America, if there ever was a year where regional volatility was seen beyond the usual. And I haven't even mentioned what we saw in Argentina and Venezuela. Had it not been for the uncertain political conditions casting a shadow on all investment decisions in 2018, Latin America would not have witnessed a deceleration in IT investment in the current year. During 2018, IT spending will end up growing 3.9% versus 2017. Last year, the year-on-year growth was 5.7%. There is a piece of good news for technology vendors and for the economy as a whole. Companies expect 2019 to be a great year for innovation and its related investment in technology, with IT budget optimism at a historical high. For 2019, 54% of companies being surveyed will increase their spending in IT, and only 17% plan to spend less than in 2018. This is a record not seen in more than 10 years. In 2019, IDC expects pent-up demand will start to give way to faster growth. The IT industry will grow at 8.2% in constant dollars, more than twice the rate it grew in 2018. Growth will be very uneven though, and this will be because of the second force in play, a much more global and fundamental force, the force of technological transformation in our society, which IDC has dubbed the third platform era. In it, spending in traditional technologies will continue to represent about a third of investment in order to support and gradually transform second platform technologies. Spending in the pillars of what is the new mature third platform architecture, such as mobility, cloud, big data analytics, and social enterprise tools, will capture about half of spending, which will grow at a more mature average of 5%. The newer generation technologies, innovation accelerators that include IoT, AR/VR, AI, 3D printing, robotics, and next generation security will grow much more rapidly as they still represent only 8% of investment today. Before we begin looking at the IT industry predictions for 2019, this year we thought we should take a quick look at the country scenario for the most relevant markets of Latin America. These slides show the expected growth for second and third platform markets in the context of economic variables and the most relevant dynamics in effect for 2019, starting with the region's largest market, Brazil. With right-leaning President Bolsonaro serving his first term in 2019, expectations are high for a more stable year economically, with the exchange rate not impacted by an election year cycle and a return to more normal fluctuations. Delayed infrastructure projects are expected to be put back on track, as well as possible privatizations in utilities and oil and gas industries, which could serve to jumpstart additional IT spending in those sectors. However, fiscal reforms will be needed in 2019 to get the country back on track. But if it's done correctly, this could lead to additional private capital investments by both national and international entities. Brazil will spend $53 billion in IT, which includes hardware, software, and services, and another $47 billion in telecom services in 2019, growing 7.4% and shrinking 0.5% respectively. 2018 was an atypical year for Mexico due to presidential elections, but even more noteworthy for the election of Andrés Manuel López Obrador, commonly known as AMLO, as being a leftist populist president who also has the support of the Congress and the Senate. With AMLO just taking office on December 1st, 2018, 2019 will be a year that many in Mexico will hope will be a recovery from the prior year, which saw exchange rate volatility for the first half of the year due to the election cycle for the candidates. With the new trade deal with Canada, the US, and Mexico, manufacturing should see improvements in 2019. Additionally, spending in the oil and gas industry with refinery investments as well as growth in retail and banking industries should come to fruition. In fact, a new huge refinery was just announced over the weekend in Tabasco. Other than the highly visible Mexico City new airport construction project that has been canceled by the president after a type of citizens referendum, other major initiatives by the government are not expected to be impacted, and many vendors in the ITC markets are looking forward to a more typical purchasing cycle by the public and private sector. Mexico will spend $24 billion in IT and $29 billion in telecom services in 2019, growing 3.6% and 1% respectively from 2018. – 2019 will see the first budget created by the current administration of Sebastián Piñera to take effect, as 2018 was the completion of previously created budgets from prior administrations. This is expected to positively impact the sector, as an increase in spending of 3.2% has been earmarked. Expansions in data centers by both global hyperscalers and local providers will continue, helping set the stage for advanced services and products built upon cloud-based delivery models. The retail segments will continue to invest aggressively in transforming their business models to an omni-channel, e-commerce, physical store environment, and we'll see investments in all the accompanying technologies to help in this progression. Chile will spend $7.1 billion in IT and $6.7 billion in telecom services in 2019, growing 0.6% and 2.5% respectively from 2018. 2019 will be a year of presidential elections in Argentina, which historically leads to a slowdown in the economy and volatile exchange rates. But compared to 2018, the indicators are actually expected to improve in 2019, coming off a year that saw the peso lose more than half its value and the economy shrinking more than 2.6%. Sectors such as agribusiness could see increases in spending after a difficult 2018 due to weather-related and human-related challenges. Software and services sectors should see continued strength as the devalued peso allows companies to take advantage of a qualified workforce at lower prices in US dollars. Argentina will spend $10.1 billion in IT and $10.7 billion in telecom services in 2019, growing at a brisk 13% and 7.3% respectively from 2018. After a polarizing election cycle in the prior year in Colombia, 2019 is expected to be a year of recovery, with a high level of investments in infrastructure and connectivity to catch up with a backlog of projects. One of President Duque's campaign pillars was that of the orange economy, which touches on the promotion of development of intellectual property and creativity, which will help spur on investments in software, apps, and video game development and technology-based innovation, among other areas. The new Minister of Technology is preparing a draft law for the modernization of the sector and is focused on public policies that unify regulation, generate investment, and protect the user while promoting the closing of the digital gap or digital divide. Colombia will spend $8.2 billion in IT and $9.8 billion in telecom services in 2019, growing 3.3% and 4.6% from 2018. With the new President Vizcarra's approval ratings at a high number not seen for a Peruvian president in recent memory, the anti-corruption proceedings taking place in the country has been well received and is helping to maintain optimism in the coming year. The economy is expected to show the fastest growth of the major South American economies, helping fuel investments in sectors such as agriculture, retail, finance and insurance, telecommunications, utilities, and tourism, among others. Peru will spend $5.1 billion in IT and $6.5 billion in telecom services in 2019, growing 8.9% and 5.8% respectively from 2018. Lastly, here is a summary of the remainder of the region that altogether represent about 15% of all IT spending in Latin America. The largest of those, unfortunately, is also at the bottom of the list in terms of GDP decreases at -5% in Venezuela. The Venezuelan economy is expected to continue to contract, with 2019 being the 6th year in a row of decreased economic activity and decreases seen in 7 years of the last 10. Prices of crude oil are forecast to remain similar to 2018 levels, providing the country only a small area of relief as it looks to not use its shrinking foreign exchange reserves, which currently stand at less than 10 billion. Companies that are still doing business in the country have been adapting and looking at technology as a means of transforming their business models. Companies with local services offerings and paid for by foreign clients who are able to take advantage of the highly distorted exchange rate in US dollars will see an interesting year. And it's important to highlight as well some of the fastest growing markets such as Panama, Dominican Republic, Bolivia, and Paraguay, which are all growing between 4 and nearly 7%. Last year, we shared our view that the IT industry is in the second chapter of the third platform era, one defined by platforms, communities, and multiplied innovation. As we present our annual outlook for the next 5 years of the IT industry, we pick up where we left off a year ago. This year's 10 predictions update several of last year's key topics, including the digitizing economy, the distribution and specialization of the cloud, the technologies accelerating app development, the rising role of AI, artificial intelligence, and the changing face of developers, because these all remain the key vectors of change for the next several years. But in this year's Futurescape, we provide more detail about how and how quickly each of these critical industry changes are taking root. Prediction one is regarding the digitized economy, where we believe that by 2022, 50% of Latin American GDP will be digitized, with growth in every industry driven by digitally enhanced offerings, operations, and relationships, and almost $380 billion in IT-related spending in Latin America between 2019 and 2022. In many ways, 2019 marks the beginning of a new era for Latin America. For most, there is promise in a new generation of leaders. There's also a challenge in finding new economics for innovation and growth. As the digitizing global economy rushes towards us, the most important driver for IT growth is, without question, the global phenomenon of digital transformation. What organizations are doing with technology to digitally transform themselves and their industries. Today, even though 30% of surveyed companies in Latin America see themselves farther along than their competition in the digital transformation journey, only half of them consider themselves digital transformation thrivers. This means more than 4 in 5 companies see themselves exploring, but not yet reaching the potential of digital transformation. In fact, this number is higher than 2 years ago when we ran our last DX maturity survey in the region. This means 2 things. 1, digitization is a moving target due to the speed of innovation at a global scale, and Latin companies see themselves falling behind that race. And 2, companies across the world are finding out that obstacles along the digital journey make it hard to move from initial wins to a steady success in their digital strategy. This is because the use cases for digital transformation technologies vary in difficulty and timing for implementation. There is no company today in Latin America that is not focusing their technology investment in DX or digital transformation, with budgets for third platform technologies going to hundreds of use cases. At IDC, we've already identified over 600 digital transformation use cases across 16 industries, and that number is rising every month. As you can see from this prediction, when you put all digital transformation initiatives together, the impact on the global economy is huge, and this macroeconomic impact has major implications for every industry, in every enterprise, in every country. Business leaders in every enterprise will need to put digital transformation at the top of the priority list. Digital thinking must be an integral part of every business leader's skill set, not delegated just to the organization's IT leadership. And digitization is not confined to just one part of the enterprise, like a customer-facing function or online commerce organizations. It's transforming major aspects of enterprise offerings, operations, and relationships. With such pervasive business impact, isolated oversight by a single executive, for example, maybe just a chief digital officer or a CIO, is unsustainable. In terms of some guidance, build a single enterprise business strategy built around digital transformation. Build your long-term digital roadmap by envisioning your strategy, building your roadmap by horizon, and identifying and prioritizing use cases. Break your DX strategic initiatives into bite-sized chunks or use cases when developing your DX roadmap. And finally, develop a fully integrated, increasingly digital native enterprise-wide technology architecture. For prediction number 2, we believe that by 2022, almost 70% of all IT spending in Latin America will be on third platform technologies, as over 75% of all enterprises build digital native IT environments to thrive in the digital economy. The tech industry remains in the midst of the same story that's been playing out for the past decade, the shift to third platform technologies. But as we see in the predictions that follow, under this continuing trend are some radical shifts, including distributed cloud, AI at the edge, hyper-agile app technologies and architectures, and AI-powered voice user interfaces, all within the third platform world. As the prediction illustrates, these technologies, most of which were invented less than 14 years ago, will soon dominate all IT spending. The implication is obvious. All enterprises must be moving well past the experimentation stage with third platform technologies like cloud, mobile, social, and big data offerings. Enterprises competing in the increasingly digitized global economy must have IT environments centered around these technologies. Legacy systems should be assessed in terms of how they may be adapted to third platform technology environments, not the other way around. The spending and adoption will be far from uniform across the Latin American region. IDC predicts that the emerging markets region that makes up the rest of Latin America subregion will actually be leading the shift away from second platform technologies at over 80% of spending, going to third platform in 2022. But this will be particularly focused on mobility. Chile, Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico will move faster beyond mobility and cloud and into innovation accelerators like IoT, AR, VR, and AI, with around close to 20% of their spend in those areas by 2022, although they will remain at 1/3 of their spend in second platform technologies. In terms of the impacts, enterprises' IT budget splits between second and third platform technologies and services must start looking like the industry-wide spending split. Cloud first should now be the strategy for all mainstream enterprises, not just leading edge or digital native organizations. And trusted IT suppliers may no longer be the right fit, depending on their third platform and digital transformation capabilities. Some incumbents will struggle and even fail. In terms of guidance, re-envision carefully the future technology architecture that will underpin your DX initiatives over the next 3 to 5 years. The new architecture you define will be a key enabler for the long-term success of the whole organization. Rethink the build versus buy strategies around your IT requirements. The long-term trend is skewing towards external sourcing, buying, for many technology categories, and this will help the channel partner and system integrator ecosystem in Latin America. Organizations should be looking to regularly review the build versus buy mix. Work hand in hand with the digital and business teams to redefine the way processes link to the services being delivered by the platform. This will be critical given the data-driven nature of the digital economy. For prediction 3, by 2022, over 20% of organizations' cloud deployments in Latin America will include edge computing, and 15% of endpoint devices and systems will execute artificial intelligence algorithms. A massive expansion in digital reach is underway. As cloud infrastructure shifts farther out to the edge, and as all that comes with the cloud stack, first and foremost, AI services come as well. This prediction focuses on the expanding topology of the emerging new enterprise IT architecture, where and how data and code will flow and execute. Enterprises' service delivery execution foundation will be increasingly based on cloud infrastructure and platform services that support hybrid and multi-cloud deployment, distributed across public cloud, hosted private cloud, local and on-prem locations, and numerous edge locations, with proximity to IoT devices and data sources, such as handheld terminals, cell phones, wearables, switches, drones, TVs, airplanes, surveillance cameras, self-driving vehicles, and smart buildings, among others. Containers and container orchestration and management services will be a foundation deployment technology for this emerging distributed cloud reality. AI services are among the first and most transformational of public cloud capabilities being deployed across the distributed edge and cloud foundation. One important contributing factor to the spreading of AI to the endpoint devices is the ability to communicate between endpoint devices, as well as from endpoint devices back to the core infrastructure. Many more innovative services from the public cloud distributed across this hybrid multi-cloud foundation will be developed. Among the first enterprises deploying true distributed cloud and edge topologies will be those with large store, branch office, and other customer proximate facilities. Retailers, financial services organizations, government services, and other organizations will need support for both holistic cloud service management and execution capabilities. By 2020, 44% of Latin America's medium and large organizations' IT budgets will be located in the cloud, mainly driven by third-party public and private cloud. Of the remaining in-house investments, $1 out of $5 in our region will be invested in private cloud inside companies' on-premise locations. AI-enabled endpoint devices will increasingly be the way AI is consumed by enterprises, employees, and customers. In Latin America, 11% of medium and large organizations already have AI within their top IT initiatives. This is expected to double over the next 4 years. Endpoint devices will, by 2022, not only be performing inferencing, many of them will also have begun to run training algorithms, allowing the endpoint device to improve its own algorithms based on the data it processes and the insights it generates. Companies should carefully select cloud service providers that share and support a distributed cloud vision, providing services that enable execution across provider facilities, on-prem facilities, and edge locations. Since edge located compute must have a small footprint and work reliably and affordably without much human interaction, organizations will need to become competent at optimizing for this new model of distributed data and compute. Expect any endpoint devices that your business currently interacts with to become intelligent and compute intensive, and craft your business and IT plans accordingly. Furthermore, determine which endpoint devices you are currently not generating business from that might become relevant in the near future due to their increasing intelligence, processing power, and communication capability. The penetration of AI and the need for vertical industry expertise will become critical. For prediction 4, we believe that by 2020, 60% of all new apps in Latin America will feature microservices architectures that improve the ability to design, debug, update, and leverage third-party code. 25% of all production apps will be cloud native. This prediction addresses the revolution that is taking place in the applications and services running on top of the distributed cloud foundation we discussed in prediction 3. A revolution in what applications are and how they are built, deployed, and updated. Last year, we referred to these new kind of apps, highly modular, distributed, continuously updated, and leveraging cloud-native technologies such as containers and serverless computing as hyper-agile apps. The driving force behind this shift to more rapidly developed, deployed, and updated apps and services is the digital economy's requirement to deliver high-quality applications at the speed of the business, or even better, at the speed of the consumer. Traditional application architectures, operations, and pace of development are completely inadequate in the digitized economy. In addition to adoption of new core technologies that enable hyper-agile app development and deployment, are agile DevOps approaches and methodologies. IDC is already seeing enterprises that have shifted fully to these new approaches and supporting tools and technologies that dramatically accelerate their ability to push out digital innovation through their organization at 50 or 100 times, or maybe even more, the frequency of their traditional approaches. In Latin America, 23% of organizations already have cloud within their top IT initiatives. This is expected to increase 1.5 times over the next 2 years. By 2020, 61% of new applications developed by Latin American companies will be cloud-native applications. It's easy to imagine that organizations that don't shift to the cloud-native world of apps and services development and deployment will be completely unable to keep up with their digitally savvy competitors. With containers and microservices, complexity to track and manage systems dependencies is set to increase in in-house environments, perpetuating old challenges related to IT operations and management. A new cadence in IT innovation cycles is enabled, where development and IT operations become more closely aligned. The transition to cloud-native applications requires development and IT operations team to evolve to build and deploy apps faster and more efficiently. Traditional IT and digital development teams are gradually being unified, while in the past they have been kept as two separate strategic IT clusters as part of a two-speed IT policy. Challenges around vulnerability tracking and service and data flow traceability are set to substantially increase compared with monolithic application environments that many companies are still using. In terms of guidance, companies should prepare new monitoring and management systems that can deal with microservices-based applications and implement an automation strategy. IT infrastructure automation is essential to accelerating the delivery of cloud-native applications by eliminating manual IT tasks. Build cohesion and convergence of interests and KPIs between development and IT operations. Transform DevOps in line with new cloud-native capabilities and development approaches. Work with the business to prioritize legacy and greenfield workloads to determine the technical feasibility and strategic importance. Not every workload should be converted to cloud native. And ensure there is a clear commitment from the business to engage in such major IT transformation beyond budget allocations. This will help to minimize friction with operational business units affected by the modernization. For Prediction 5, we believe that by 2022, a new class of professional developers producing code without custom scripting will expand the developer population by 15%, accelerating digital transformation. I should have mentioned at the start, if you're wondering why there's two colors of bubbles in some of the slides, this shows the difference between the impact and the timing that we believe will happen in Latin America versus at a global level. So the pink one would be Latin America, the bluish one, turquoise, would be worldwide. Simpler, powerful dev tools are rapidly expanding the size and profile of developers. By 2022, development language environments and tool software for developers will be growing at a 7.4% CAGR in Latin America, at the same speed as the US, and the most accelerated growth rate in comparison to other regions. Investment in development platforms and tools in the public cloud deployment, or PaaS, will be growing at 43% of the next 5 years in Latin America, 3.3 times as fast as in the US, and 2.6 times the global speed of growth. That's why you see the bubble to the left. This is the result of an increasing number of independent software vendors, which in Latin America, we know there's at least 5,000 registered companies, more than twice the number of 5 years ago, and having more developers working with development tools that don't require custom scripts, building business applications oriented to new business initiatives such as customer service, analytics, and digital commerce, among others. It's also a result of an accelerated number of startups and developer communities, which in some countries of Latin America continue recruiting new developer profiles to support industry application requirements in fintech, commerce, services, consumer, and many others. We should highlight that in Brazil, there were 62,000 startups registered in 2018, for example. Every enterprise's ability to compete in the digitized economy will be defined by how well they expand their own population of digital innovators beyond traditional coders to meet rapidly expanding market demands. Traditional protocols and procedures may be insufficient to enable productive collaboration between developers that produce code using custom scripting and those that don't. New developers within the enterprise will put stress on existing access policies to data and other corporate resources, necessitating a revamp of those policies to support wider access, but within appropriate limits. In terms of guidance, understand and serve the development-related needs of this new class of developer with respect to topics such as access to company data, automated deployment, application monitoring, and the implementation of security. Proactively define governance protocols to ensure that development is performed using consistent, repeatable processes, as well as recognize widely understood development principles, regardless of whether the developer reports directly to IT. Consider identifying a liaison between this new class of developers and corporate IT to ensure that they have appropriate levels of access to organizational systems and databases. Work with HR to reinforce the message that this new class of developer that builds application without custom scripts is made up of bona fide developers that can claim the title of developer on equal footing with developers that use custom scripting. For prediction 6, we believe that from 2018 to 2022, with new tools and platforms, more developers, agile methods, and lots of code reuse, close to 30 million new logical enterprise apps will be created by Latin American developers. This astounding explosion in app and services development and deployment pace and scale is the product of two trends discussed previously: the shift to hyper-agile app technologies, architectures, and methodologies, and the major expansion in the developer population enabled by low-code and no-code tools. A third contributor to the app explosion is the availability of public and private repositories of task-specific code, enabling developers to create applications by connecting functionality from multiple sources. This trend is further empowered and accelerated by the flood of robust development services from the hyperscalers, including artificial intelligence, cognitive, machine learning, data services, analytics, and IoT services. The end result is that modern developers have the option of building code from scratch or going out and downloading chunks of data from snippets to entire services. If this massive digital innovation explosion we predict seems hard to believe, we'd point out that at an enterprise level, this is already happening in organizations that have adopted these tools, technologies, and methods. They are seeing the code development and deployment volumes increase by 25 to 75 times or greater. The ability to accelerate digital innovation volume and pace will be the most critical new benchmark for organizations competing in the digital economy. Development times are becoming dramatically reduced, shortening time to value and driving entirely new metrics for project volumes, release frequency, and more. Organizations' KPIs around digital innovation are shifting towards digital native values and away from traditional IT values. Although it is true that this type of practice in Latin America is at an early stage, IDC believes that the ability to manage the talent network required to both develop and test quality enterprise digital applications with the required speed will become the greatest challenge of the organization. Putting more emphasis on the design and usability aspects of the development of personalized applications through design thinking methodologies is perhaps one of the most outstanding improvements in the new generation of enterprise apps. In terms of guidance, adopting agile and DevOps tools and approaches as the default across your enterprise and not as the exception. Learn the pros and cons of various open source software licensing models and what those licenses allow an organization to do and what actions are prohibited or forced. Evaluate and adopt machine learning and AI-enabled automation for DevOps, including quality, change management, and portfolio prioritization as solutions mature. For prediction 7, we believe that by 2022, 15% of public cloud computing will be based on non-86 processors, including quantum. By 2022, also, organizations will spend more on vertical software as a service apps than horizontal apps, especially for those that leverage a local or regional competitive advantage over global firms. What could predictions about increasingly heterogeneous infrastructure and verticalized apps possibly have to do with each other. They're both about one of the hallmark trends of the multiplied innovation chapter, the trend toward an increasingly optimized and specialized IT environment. At the infrastructure level, the emergence of AI has had a strong impact on the processor landscape in the data center. IDC expects this trend to grow to the extent that by 2022, about a quarter of all server value will be from accelerated servers. Not all those servers will be performing AI workloads. A large segment is executing non-AI use cases that still require massive parallel computing power. In Latin America, there's a more heterogeneous cloud hardware investment landscape compared to the global average. The weight of hyperscalers is less predominant, and many local players, including important telecom providers, play a key role in the infrastructure install base. Although worldwide hyperscalers replicate their infrastructure strategies in the region, local players take a more conservative approach. Therefore, traditional x86 environments remain more prevalent. IDC expects positive but lower growth in non-x86 penetration in the cloud market, which might reach 15% of the total by 2022. In Latin America, vertical SaaS apps will also expand further, but with more specialization on specific regionally adapted stronger use cases in industries such as oil, gas mining, agro industry, utilities, consumer packaged goods, and automotive, among others. Additionally, telecommunications and media might play another different role here, as they are moving towards different business directions than the US counterparts, and might benefit of the mix of vertical and horizontal software as a service approaches, as well as some of them becoming cloud players for their peers. Oh. Sorry about that. There we go. For prediction 8, by 2024, AI-enabled user interfaces and process automation will replace a quarter of today's screen-based apps in Latin America. By 2022, 25% of enterprises will use conversational speech tech for customer engagement. Globally, AI investment will reach north of $19 billion in AI and cognitive solutions in 2018. Still, in early adoption, Latin America will represent just 1% of the global spend in AI. However, AI and cognitive applications will produce productivity improvements of more than $60 billion per year for companies in Latin America in 2019. In Latin America, the industries that are moving faster into AI experimentation are retail, banking, healthcare, securities, and investment services, as well as the education sector. At the same time, IDC is seeing that process automation based on robotic process automation is being utilized in enterprise after enterprise to streamline and replace human tasks that are often based on existing B2B and B2C applications. IT will be expected to become familiar with and begin using conversational AI platforms in developing the next generation of enterprise applications. Many customer service and marketing departments are already looking at or involved with these technologies, and IT needs to be able to provide advice and resources in order to provide security, interoperability with other enterprise apps, and access to corporate IT resources. In terms of guidance, develop a strategic plan for when and where voice-based conversational technology should be utilized within the enterprise. Develop a short list of prospective vendors of conversational AI platforms to be used when prototyping these new types of initiatives. Become familiar with robotic and intelligent process automation vendor capabilities and use these in planning for business process and task automation. And continuously re-educate IT to stay abreast of new developments and find a trusted specialist vendor and or channel partner to work with in this new burgeoning area. For prediction 9, IDC believes that by 2022 in Latin America, 20% of servers will encrypt data at rest and in motion. And over 20% of security alerts will be handled by AI-powered automation, and more than 5 million people in the region will have blockchain-based digital identities. It really is a constant tug of war between protectors and attackers, and digital security and trust have been under siege for years, especially in Latin America. But security and trust are poised to rapidly expand through a variety of next-generation security and trust offerings and approaches. When it comes to maintaining trust around data, for years, businesses have turned to various encryption tools, but they've typically used different tools for various islands of data and only encrypted a small percentage of their data. But this shift to pervasive encryption will increasingly cover the entire platform, including databases, applications, network traffic, file systems, storage units, system logs, and APIs for communicating outside the platform. As mentioned, IDC projects that by 2022, 20% of the server platforms will have some type of pervasive encryption embedded in their hardware and operating environment. In Latin America, Brazil and Mexico have already begun to test blockchain integration within national identity systems. As this initiative moves forward, financial transactions can benefit by having additional security layers, thus providing finance organizations with a stronger posture to comply with personal data regulations such as European GDPR and the local flavors that we have in the region, such as LPDP, LFPD, PPP, and LPDP, depending on which country. Pervasive encryption will simplify and strengthen the IT data protection mandate, increasing compliance, and prevent various types of breaches. No organization will be able to adopt pervasive encryption across its infrastructure all at once. It's going to be a gradual process, starting with the platforms that host the most sensitive data, then working outward to the system that these platforms interact with. In terms of guidance, companies should be on the lookout for platforms, both on-prem or in the cloud, that are launched with full encryption capabilities. Ask your main vendors or potential providers whether and when such systems are on their roadmaps. Leverage existing and evolving encryption options in the meantime, such as those available in processors and operating systems, to provide your data with broader protection. Work with consortiums and communities to build solutions, as well as develop an initial response mechanism based upon the level of risk or severity. That is, if an asset is not critical, let the platform initiate an automated response, be it a patch or sending the miscreant to the VPN. And finally, for prediction 10 regarding multi-cloud, we believe that by 2022, the top 4 cloud mega platforms will host 70% of infrastructure and platform as a service deployments in Latin America. And by 2024, 80% of the top 1,000 companies in Latin America will mitigate lock-in through multi-cloud and hybrid technologies and tools. As we've predicted over the past several years, market power continues to consolidate in the all-important cloud mega platform world. In some respects, that brings some market benefits as it concentrates the market's innovation power in the developer community, among service providers, and with other ecosystem communities around a finite number of platforms, avoiding unproductive fragmentation of effort. Over the next 4 to 5 years, we predict a trend by enterprises and ecosystem players that will partially mitigate lock-in effects from market concentration, embracing integrated hybrid and multi-cloud tools and strategies. For virtually all cloud mega platform players, these hybrid and multi-cloud capabilities are or will be initially focused on bridging their own public cloud offerings with customers' on-prem and edge locations. An integrated hybrid and multi-cloud management strategy will become a core capability over the next 3 years. In terms of guidance, create an integrated hybrid and multi-cloud management strategy that takes advantage of the unique properties of each of the public cloud mega platforms. Understand the key differences between various clouds and use management tools and processes to reduce risk. Look for technologies that support open protocols that enable the deployment and delivery of capabilities in a distributed multi-cloud environment. Take an inventory of existing management tool investments, consider the need to consolidate and purchase new tools that enable multi-cloud transparency. Pick your cloud mega platform providers wisely. Keep functionality versus multi-platform support trade-offs high on your assessment list. Putting all our 2019 predictions together, it's clear to see that the IT industry is entering a period of dramatic and disruptive transformation, defined by a deeper and deeper integration of digital services and technologies into the global economy, widespread and almost unanimous reinvention of enterprises' IT environments to support their ability to compete in the digitizing economy, the expanding ability to execute public cloud source capabilities across a widely distributed cloud topology, a major shift within enterprises of all sizes and within all industries towards agile and DevOps tools, a radical reinvention of the application and service world around containers, serverless technologies, microservices architectures, APIs, and shared technology services platforms, and the integration of AI technologies and solutions within all aspects of enterprises. As industries and the global economy shift increasingly toward this digital world, CXO's #1 priority in Latin America must be to ready their organizations for the race to reinvent themselves for the multiplied innovation marketplace. And as enterprises' dependence on technology increases, CXOs must carefully assess their IT suppliers, selecting those that are likewise aggressively reinventing themselves and their offerings for the digitized economy. With that, I think we have 6 or 7 minutes for questions, which Elizabeth will be leading. Okay, it looks like the first question is for me. And it says, is there much future for AR, VR in our region, or is it just for gamers? Okay, so just to clarify, AR is augmented reality, VR is virtual reality. So AR is when you're looking at something real in real life and digital things are imposed on top of it. Virtual reality is when you have no vision, it's completely a virtual world and it's essentially black outside the viewer. What we've seen in Latin America is that up until now, the VR category has been much larger in terms of units, but we expect that, and largely geared towards gamers. But over the coming years, the potential growth is going to come more from the AR side, and mostly because of all the B2B application potentials. So we could have service providers in countries reacting with technicians. So there's a huge opportunity on the AR side, and we believe that within 2 years, probably more will be spent in Latin America on the AR side than the VR side, but we do continue to see very high growth in both categories across nearly all the countries. Let me see the next question.
Thank you very much, Jay. We have another question. This is addressed to Diego Anasini, and it says, when do you expect 5G to be available in Latin America? Diego, please help us.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Well, actually, 5G, we can separate the answer into different elements. First is devices. We could expect the first 5G capable devices over the next year to be available worldwide. But then there's need for regulations and the actual deployment of the networks. We expect that to happen not earlier than 2020 to 2021 in the region. And there's also some space to go over 4G or LTE developments. So we could expect the first deployments at the beginning of the next decade, but the mainstream will come probably between 2022 and 23.
Thank you very much, Diego. Before we continue reading the questions, I would like to remember to all of you that if you have not submitted your questions, you may type them into the Q&A box. And I would also like to remember that we will send you the audio replay of this session next week. So we have the following question for Juan Pablo Seminara. It says, is cloud growth positive or negative for the infrastructure market?
Okay, you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we can listen to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, actually, it's a mixed question because if we take the market as a whole, with the impact of cloud, it's not producing a market growth. I'm taking our studies from server storage and data center networking. But that not necessarily means that it's a negative impact. Actually, it's a positive impact as a market. But what it changes is the buyer. The buyer, when you talk about cloud, is a more wise, efficiently, with more purchasing power, which is the service provider that is going to be the cloud. That's what we are counting in infrastructure. And that makes it more efficient way to buy hardware and to use this hardware. So that's why the market is not growing. If we take the traditional non-cloud investments are declining in the period of 18-22 CAGR of 6%. But if we take the infrastructure investments related to cloud are growing at 10%. The whole market is flat, but in a different, different moves. So the answer is positive in terms of infrastructure, but in terms of market, it's neutral.
Thank you very much, Juan Pablo. We have another question. This is for Ricardo Villate. It says, digital transformation is a must for Latin American businesses, as indicated by your predictions, and is thriving as such. What key elements do companies need to consider when embarking on DX? And it means digital transformation. Please, Ricardo.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yes, digital transformation is in fact perhaps the strongest force behind all of these predictions that we're seeing, not just in the region, but also at the global level. I think that when a company approaches digital transformation, they need to consider that this is a several dimensioned model. IDC recognizes at least 4 key dimensions of transformation: customer transformation, information transformation, operations transformation, and the workforce transformation. To give you a few examples, IDC is predicting that in the next couple of years, 2 out of 3 B2C companies will embrace Net Promoter Scores as leading success metrics. On the customer side, that 80% of enterprises would create data management and monetization capabilities. That's on the information aspect of it, information transformation. And that 1 in 3 Global 2000 companies will have implemented advanced digital twins of their operational processes. These digital twins enable flatter organizations and 1/3 fewer knowledge workers. In terms of the workforce, the transformation of the workforce, over the next 5 years, 1/3 of workers will start working with bots or other forms of artificial intelligence. This will require a redesign in operational processes, in performance metrics, and recruitment, and other approaches to just managing the talent. Companies also need to make sure that culture and leadership are enabled to lead this transformation. We think that in the next few years, we'll see a decline on the usage of Chief Digital Officer title. Digital will have become fully embedded in the entire company, but actually more than 2/3 of CEOs or 2/3 of all CEOs will come from having spent part of their careers leading digital initiatives. So this is actually embracing digital across all the different areas of transformation. This means that when companies embrace digital transformation, that they have to address all these areas. They have to address all aspects of a company strategy, the key performance indicators, organizational structure, roadmaps that consider different use cases for digital transformation over diverse horizons of times over the next 5 to 10 years, and an entire redesign of their business process, such as it is aligned to the technology platform that exists in the company and that will be evolving over the next few years.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. We have another question. It says, what can we expect of SD-WAN evolution in Latin America in 2019? Diego Anesini, could you help us with this question, please?
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth, and thanks for the question. And well, the scenario for SD-WAN is totally different as to what I just said about 5G. In terms of from the vendor side, there's a consolidation going on in the market with many acquisitions. Just to put as an example, the acquisition of Viptela performed by Cisco to attend the higher level of the market. But there are others in the so the market is in full consolidation mode. And then from the service provider perspective, which is probably the most interesting thing facing the end customers, we see many launches this year and next year. For example, Telefonica launching SD-WAN services in Chile and Peru, or American Mobile Claro launching in Argentina this year, CenturyLink over this year and next year. So there's a lot of growth in that market. We expect that market to grow over 55% over the next 5 years, and we expect that to be as a complement to traditional MPLS networks, as SD-WAN provides more flexibility and more even security to the network. And we expect MPLS to continue being the option for higher SLAs required for example, headquarters, and the other type of access is being as part of the requirement for smaller branches.
Thank you very much, Diego. The next question is for Juan Pablo Seminara. It says, are there mission critical workloads that are being hosted in the public cloud? Juan Pablo, please.
Well, at least in Latin America, there are few mission critical workloads in public cloud. Normally, what we are seeing in that sense is moving to a hybrid cloud, because what they told us in the main companies is that still support for public cloud for mission critical still is not as good as a dedicated private cloud. So mainly they are choosing dedicated private cloud because of the support.
Thank you very much, Juan Pablo. We have another question for Ricardo Villate. It says, in general, what is the importance of Brazil in the Latin America IT growth? Ricardo, could you help us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you saw in our deck, Brazil is going to spend about $53 billion in Latin America, in IT over the next year. This is about 41% of all IT spending in the region, which is around 130 billions. So that means that for every dollar that is invested in technology, about 40 cents are coming from Brazil. If no other country grew in 2019, if there was zero growth in 2019 from all the other countries, and Brazil would grow at the rate that we are predicting it would grow, which is about 7%, the entire region would grow 4%. The sad thing is that there's other countries that are growing less than 4%, and this combination makes for the average of the region being a little bit shy of that number. So as you can see, in any market that you are playing, if you are not winning in Brazil, you are probably not winning in the regional market. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. I want to remind all of you that you will receive the audio replay of this session in the following days. And of course, if you have any more questions, you can send them to us. Due to the time, we need to close this webinar, but we want to thank you, all of you. Please don't hesitate to contact IDC if you need any support from us.